Today we jump back to our NHL Offseason plan series. We're now working our way up the list. We're on the 17th ranked team from the regular season, the Washington Capitals. What will the offseason have in store for them, and what moves might we see this offseason? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have another video to do here in the off-season plan series. Today we're looking at the Washington Capitals, the 17th ranked team from the regular season, the last team to clinch a playoff spot, and the first team to lose out in the playoffs as well. Unfortunately, getting swept by the first place New York Rangers 4 straight games. So in case you're new to this series, we're going to recap some of the regular season stats, take a look at how things went both as a team and some individual numbers, take a look at how things changed throughout the year, cap space that they have this offseason, pending contracts that need to be either re-signed, replaced, etc., the draft, questions facing the franchise, just analyze all of our expectations for this team over the course of the summer, getting ready for next year. So starting with recapping last season, they had a 91-point campaign, 40 wins, 31 losses, 11 overtime losses. Like I said, squeaked into the playoffs. Their goal differential, however, was one of the worst ones you've seen for a team qualifying for the playoffs. They ended up scoring only 216 goals. For a team that's Ovechkin's been on, that's got to be one of the lowest numbers that they've had. They were always a high-powered offense. Things have started to change here over the past couple of years. 216 goals was only the 28th best result in the NHL last season. They also allowed 252 goals against, which was league average. So it wasn't so much that the goals against was through the roof, it's that the goals for was really down. So that created a pretty negative differential there. Like I said, it's not common to see a team with a minus 30, minus 40 goal differential getting into the playoffs. I know a lot of people thought, if we had a different format, we wouldn't see that. But hey, it is what it is. They got in, but they didn't win any playoff games, which wasn't a huge surprise after the massive, mismatch, you could say, with the top seed team from the Big Apple. On the power play was respectable, but not super high. 18th best in the league, 20.6%. There was a time when 20% was ranked a little higher, but in the last number of years, we've seen scoring increase in the league. A lot of that's to do with stronger power plays and adjustments that a lot of teams have made and how they're run. So 20.6, like I said, it's still a respectable number, but it's not phenomenal. The penalty kill was at 79%. Again, somewhat respectable, but not quite league average. 19th best overall in the NHL. Usually you want your power play and your penalty kill to at least add up the two percentages to 100, and they've done that. So like I said, it's kind of hovering around that respectable, just below average mark, but nothing to be too excited about. Both could stand to use a little bit of work. I know from an individual standpoint, the top performers include Dylan Strome being the team's leading scorer this year with 67 points. Obviously, good free agent signing for Washington, bringing Strome in. Ovechkin started really slow this year. A lot of people thought that he might not even hit 20, maybe 25 goals. He finished with 31. The second half of the year was much better for him. I'm not really sure why the first half was so slow compared to the second half, but the numbers were much better. At one point earlier in the year, a lot of people were starting to question, is he even going to be able to have a chance to beat Gretzky's all-time goal mark if this continues? And he did pick it up, and obviously he still has 2 years left on his contract, needs to score, I think it's 42 goals, I believe it is. So, it seems realistic, but next year, if he can have at least 20 to maybe closer to 25 than the year after, he'll be able to do, maybe the all-time mark and take it over. If he has better than that next year, make it even easier, but we'll see. This year was a bit of a struggle for him at times. John Carlson had a decent year as well, 52 points. Tom Wilson was in the next highest scorer, a big drop-off down to 35. And Connor McMichael, the youngster who got to play a more pivotal role this year, put up 33 points. So, again, you can see why the numbers were from the scoring are off. Ovechkin, of course, took a step back, and they just didn't really have the bodies of the people to really, make up for that. In-season moves, they did finally move on from Evgeny Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov has been wanting a trade out of Washington for probably parts of 2 years to say. That he was traded to Carolina for a third rounder. They didn't trade it Joel Edmondson to Toronto. They got a third and a fifth. And then they also traded Anthony Mantha, who they've been wanting to move on from him. That contract didn't age well, but he did have a much better year this year before he was traded. He finally found a way to kind of create some value for himself, played better, got some more goals, generated some interest, got traded to Vegas, and they get a second and a fourth. So at least they were able to put some draft picks in the cupboard here. I mean, none of them are super high, but you get a second, a couple thirds, fourth, fifth, and some veteran guys got to move on that they obviously didn't see being a part of the team's future. Goaltending was actually pretty decent when it comes to Charlie Lindgren. Lindgren kind of held down the fort. Wasn't, elite level, but it was better than league average. 25, 16, and 7 record, a 9.11 save percentage, and a 2.67. To be honest, without Charlie Lindgren, I don't think they have any chance of getting in the playoffs. Darcy Kuemper, who was signed 2 off seasons back away from Colorado after they won the Stanley Cup, he got a bigger free agent contract to be the guy there, and last year was just not good for him at all. He had a record of 13, 14-3, and 890 save percentage and a 3.3 goals against. Lindgren essentially took the starting role from him. And I would suspect that they'll go into next year with Charlie Lindgren likely expecting to still have that starting role. We'll have to see. But without the emergence of him, because he's been pretty decent for them now for a little while since he and Kuemper both arrived. But things kind of really switched this year with him taking a bigger role for sure. So without him, no playoffs. I think that's fair to say for sure. So a decent amount of change, but now what will we expect this offseason? Well, it's going to be somewhat complicated. We have some question marks around this team. Not a lot of cap space. They only have $6.68 million. They have 16 contracts. However, they do have the contract for Nicholas Backstrom, who's going to be expected to play the season on long-term injured reserve. We're not expected to see him in uniform on the ice. He did attempt to come back after the major hip surgery he had. It did not work out well. He was still having a lot of discomfort, wasn't being productive, and decided to step away. And right now, according to what we've heard, it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to resume. He'll be on LTIR for the remainder. So certainly that's a big contract that they can use for that. So that'll greatly increase their pool of LTIR and cap availability. Another big question mark right now that we don't know is TJ Oshie too. So that cap space could very well change. As far as the contracts they have to look after within that available cap space, well, there's not a lot. So it makes you wonder if they could do some moves between trades and free agency to kind of bring in some different players and try to give themselves a boost here. But from the expiring contracts, they only have Connor McMichael, who had a pretty good year last year, like I said, 33 points. Beck Ballenstein, not going to be a big money grabber, Ballenstein, but he played a pivotal role for them on the fourth line. That fourth line that they had there really worked well. He worked well with Dowd. I'm surprised that there was some trade interest in Ballenstein, but they obviously saw the value to keeping him. And obviously the offers, even though there's lots of interest, the offers weren't like phenomenally high, which is why he didn't get moved. So he needs a new contract. Him and McMichael won't be overly expensive to look after. I'm not sure what kind of deal they'll do with Connor McMichael. I suspect a bridge deal, but we'll see. On the UFA side, they have Max Pacioretty and Nikolai Aube-Kubel. So I don't know about Pacioretty if he'll return or not. There's still, I guess, different opinions out there if he's even going to play. Would they bring him back? I don't know. I mean, after missing as much time as he did the past 2 years, to me, he didn't really have that great of a season. I'm not really sure there's going to be a ton of interest to bring him back and for him to play in the NHL next year. We'll have to really see on that. Difficult to say. Aube-Kubel, I could see maybe getting signed. But again, another contract that's not going to really cost you a whole lot. Heading into the 2024 NHL Draft, they do have 8 picks. So they obviously added some picks with some of the moves they made throughout the year. They're picking 17th overall in the first round, so they will get a decent prospect, but at that level, you're not going to get a player who's ready right away. You're looking at probably at least 1, if not 2 years development time before they really have a legit shot at the NHL. 8 picks in total, including 3 in the third round. So, could they package up some of those third rounders, second rounder, try to get into the first round again? Could they make other moves to try to get up higher in the draft? It is possible. I wouldn't rule it out. We'll have to see here. Obviously, the first year, Spencer Carberry was spent a lot of time giving younger players opportunities. For the most part, I think he did a good job, and we'll have to see what moves here that management makes to try to give him a better roster. But what are the biggest questions going into next year? Well, like I said, the cap space alone, you have to do some work internally to know what's available to you. Like I said, as of right now, they have $6.6 million in regular available space. Then there's that Backstrom contract of $9.2 million. He's not expected to play, but obviously TJ Oshie is another one. Like he, at the end of the year himself, said that he would have a hard time giving up hockey and he would love to continue playing, but he's had a lot of back problems and he's been in and out of the lineup, and he said he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't think it's fair to his team and to himself to constantly be going in and out. Knows the team has younger prospects that are going to be looking for spots and just wants to do what's obviously best for the organization. And at the same time, he said for him to play next year, he needs assurance from his doctors that he's going to have a good, healthy back and he can kind of get through the season. And, now last year I think that would be probably pretty difficult for them to give him. But then again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure. But he does make $5.75 million. If he doesn't play, that LTIR pool opens up even more. Then you're looking at over, 14, pushing $15 million of LTIR space alone, not to mention the regular 6.6 available space that they have already. So certainly, again, a big blow for a player not to be there. They have an aging team. A lot of guys are just not able to keep up with it, fulfill their contracts because of injuries. Losing Backstrom and Oshie would be huge, but it's a real possibility. Backstrom almost a certainty, whereas Oshie's probably more certain than not. Of course, another big question is how do they address the lack of depth suddenly at the center position? It's a pivotal role to have a shot at being competitive in playoffs. You need real good depth down the middle. Dylan Strome, to me, is probably a better 2C. He's had to play that one spot a lot, and he did well considering. He's been a good pickup for them. He's not making a ton of money, so with what he's paid to do, I think he lived up to his contract and did well. But if they could find somebody to be a stronger 1C than him and move him to 2, would be even better. That's not going to be easy to do. Those players don't grow on trees. They don't come available very often. So difficult to say how they go about it, but they need to add to the depth. I mean, Connor McMichael can obviously be a center down, now and down the road. They have some other youngsters too, but they could use another real solid, established, scoring type center, and I'm not sure how they're going to go about doing that. Obviously, with at one point they had Backstrom and Kuznetsov, and now they're both gone. So we'll have to see how they go about doing that. But to find a way to add a top 6 center would be absolutely phenomenal. On the goalie front, there is some talk that Darcy Kemper could find himself moved. Obviously, like I said, Charlie Lindgren kind of stole the starting role from him. There could be another way for them to gain additional flexibility in cap space. Plus, in the minors, they do have Hunter Shepard, who's done really well and could possibly be a guy that they want to give more opportunity to at the NHL level. He could partner with Lindgren next year for a decent duo based on how Lindgren played this year. If he kept it up and you can mix in Shepard, to me, that could work. I mean, it wouldn't probably be any worse than what you saw last year with Darcy Kemper. Now, Kemper could also bounce back. I believe he still has, 3 years on his contract because he got a 5-year deal after winning the Cup with the Avalanche. So, that was 2 years ago now. So at the same time, we'll see. But would Darcy Kemper maybe be moved? I think they'll at least look into it. Charlie Lindgren's also doing an extension, which I suspect they will do. But I said I don't imagine they'll want to box out Shepard for too long. I think they'll want to give him an opportunity. So I'll be curious to see how they handle the goaltending situation. Certainly when it comes to some of the younger players that saw a taste of action last year, can we see guys like Hendrix Lapierre and Mironashenko take full-time spots next year? That's difficult to say for sure. I think Lapierre's a little bit more certain. Mironashenko, definitely, I can see him definitely playing NHL games. I'm not sure he's going to be 100% a full-timer, but their development, I guess, was promising. You throw in, other guys that are still on the younger side of things on the roster, like McMichael and Protas and other guys on the back end that are coming up. Like, they do have, a decent amount of young players, but there's not a lot of high-end talent there. So that's really something that they need to figure out, and hopefully they can get themselves a real good player in this year's draft. And, of course, what's Ovechkin going to be able to do next year? That's a big question, and it's hard to predict. Is he going to be able to chase history down and get into the playoffs again? It's difficult to say. Like, it seems likely that it's going to be a challenge for the Capitals at this rate, without burning a couple of major moves this offseason, for them to be a playoff team. Obviously Ovechkin's ability to chase down this record he can only do so much himself. So clearly, how they address the forward depth is going to play a big role. Obviously, he needs players that he can play with. And right now, like, all of his longtime buddies are kind of slowly drifting out here. Like, you lost Backstrom basically a couple of years now. You got Kuznetsov is gone. Oshie's likely doesn't come back. He played okay with Strome, like, at times. And, we saw Mantha move. Not that he played that huge of a role, but still, like, a lot of these top forwards that have been there probably won't be next year. So we'll be curious to see how they go about doing things. They have some flexibility, though. If you look at some of the names that are out there in free agency or in the trade market, they do have the options and ability from a cap perspective, at least, to make a move. But free agency is one thing. Trade perspective would be challenging because they don't really have a ton, in my opinion, that they can give up. Like, I know I've heard some people talk about some of the bigger names out there. Like, if the Leafs did move Mitch Marner, would Washington be a spot? Well, what would they give to Toronto for Marner? I just don't know that they have the assets to pull it off. So, whether it's Marner or any other top offensive player that might be available, it's going to be real hard for them. So I think free agency is going to be the main way for them to go, mix in some young guys. But this team, I think, is going to probably, barring some major moves that I don't see coming, likely continue to take steps back here. And I think they're going to slowly kind of dip into more of a rebuild. So we'll see. But getting into the playoffs is going to be real hard for them next year and the next couple of years, I think. So let me know what you think and your expectations of the Capitals in the offseason, and we'll talk about it further down in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.